A lot of storylines, and let's break it down. He's part of the broadcast team for Seattle. Hey, he's a Hall of Famer back in 2006, nine-time Pro Bowler, Warren Moon, and he's part of the Seattle Seahawks broadcast team, and he's with us here on Tiki and Tierney. Warren, how are you today, buddy? What's happening?
I'm doing great, guys. How you guys doing this morning? And Happy New Year to you.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, right back at you there, big man. It's been a while.
How concerned should we be about the weather? That's all we're talking about with Seattle and Minnesota, and chilly Minnesota it's supposed to be.
Well, it's going to be chilly. There's no question about it. And they said it might be one of the coldest games ever, depending on the wind chill. And I've played in some pretty cold weather. When I was up in Canada, I played in a game that was minus 42 Celsius. So I know about playing in the weather and how it can affect both teams, especially psychologically, because you can psych yourself out of a game just by worrying too much about the weather, worrying too much about what you're going to wear, how many different layers of clothes you're going to put on, and all of a sudden it restricts the way you're able to move around and play the game. So if you're focusing too much on that, it's going to take away your focus from the game. And you just have to go out there and have a mental aspect that, it's going to be miserable. It's going to be 3 hours out of your life that is not going to be enjoyable unless you win the football game. So go out there and give it everything you got. And then when it's all over, hopefully you're moving ahead in the playoffs as opposed to worrying about if I'm going to be warm enough or not. Like I said, psychologically, you can put yourself out of a football game by thinking too much about the cold.
Yeah, you're right. But I think the fortunate thing for both of these teams is that their offenses aren't predicated on throwing the ball 50 times a game. You think that helps,
Right.
and especially with Marshawn Lynch supposedly coming back for your Seahawks?
Yeah, Marshawn's going to be full go, and this is his type of game. This is his type of weather. You want a back that can grind it out, that can get you tough yards. He's played up in Buffalo the first part of his career, so he knows about playing in the cold a little bit. Russell Wilson played at Wisconsin, and so he knows about playing in the cold as well. So I don't think these things are going to be a huge factor. It's not going to be wet out there or anything like that. I think it's supposed to be cold and sunny, so that's going to help. But, the ball will be a lot slicker. It'll be a little bit harder because of the cold weather, and that's kind of where the Deflategate came into play a couple of years ago with Tom Brady, because when the ball is a little bit softer, if you take some air out of it, you can grip it a little bit better. So who knows? We might have a Deflategate 2 going on out there this weekend.
Hey, no cheating.
I know Teddy Bridgewater likes to play with a glove on his hand, and a lot of quarterbacks like to do that. I always wanted to feel the football, so I never wore a glove, and I don't think Russell wears a glove either, but he has a big hand for a guy his size, so I think that's going to be an advantage for him as well, where Teddy has a pretty small hand compared to most quarterbacks.
That's true, and we've heard that quite a bit. We're talking to Warren Moon here on Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio. You mentioned Marshawn Lynch, and any team would be thrilled to have him back in the fold here, but I wonder, Warren, if the inclination to maybe force-feed him the ball a little bit too much is a possible concern. He hasn't played since the middle of November, and I know he's a physical guy rather than a timing guy. But any fear that they can try to, maybe use him a little bit too much, and he's just rusty and it doesn't go well?
Well, Pete has a good sense of what guys can do and what level they're at, and we also have another running back in Christian Michael and Bryce Brown, who has both played well in the absence of Marshawn and Thomas Rawls. Christian had over 100 yards last week against Arizona. He had 84 yards in his first game when he came back. So he's the guy that's capable of coming in and getting 10 or 12 carries to go along with, if you can give Marshawn maybe the ball anywhere from 12 to 15, 16 times in the ball game. If you can get that type of distribution in those running backs, that's kind of what you want. So I don't think they're going to overuse Marshawn. They'll really look at him closely just to see how much wear and tear he's taking on his body.
We're talking to Warren Moon, of course, 2006 Hall of Fame inductee with us here on Tiki and Tierney, CBS Sports Radio. Hey, Warren, you mentioned the size of Teddy Bridgewater's hands. It's hard to really judge who he is. They don't ask him to do a whole lot. I don't see any skill set that just jumps off the TV screen. I know he's a pretty cerebral kid. And he's good. We've met him. He's a good young man, and he seems to be a pretty diligent pro. But in terms of having, the electric athleticism or the great arm, I wouldn't say he's got that. What's his best characteristic?
I think his intelligence. I think he takes really good care of the football. He has great understanding of the offense, and I think as they build weapons around him, he's going to be better. He was very productive in college, and he had good players around him, which helps any quarterback. But I think he's a solid solid quarterback, and I think he's going to be a solid quarterback for a long time. Like you said, he's not going to wow you with his arm. He's not going to wow you with his athleticism, but he'll do all the right things. And if you get playmakers around him that can catch the football and make big plays after the catch, that's what he needs, and they need more of that on that team. And they're starting to develop some of that. Mike Wallace hasn't been what they wanted him to be this year so far. They've got some other receivers, but I think having a good tight end and Kyle Rudolph, it has helped him. He's kind of a security blanket. And I think Teddy's just going to continually get better and better. But that team is dominated by Adrian Peterson, and that's where everything starts. And who knows, Adrian's not going to be there forever, and at some point, Teddy's going to have to take over the football team, and I think he'll be ready when that time comes.
Yeah, I think you're right because he seems like a really good young man. Before we get to some of these other games, Warren, I know that you become a leading advocate for this concussion issue as it pertains to some of the players, especially of your generation. For those who don't know, Warren played in the NFL from '84 through 2000. Man, you retired when you were 44. I mean, you were.
Well, you should have been there a lot earlier.
You should have
really.
been, but wow, that's a long time, man. 44. But tell me your thoughts on this issue.
I had 6 years prior to that too in Canada.
Yeah,
so,
you're right.
I played a long time.
You're right. All-time leading passer in football history, not just NFL, but football history if you count the CFL. But tell me your thoughts on what you think about this concussion issue, and especially around the movie, which I know you haven't seen yet. But what are your thoughts? Because this affects a lot of the guys of your era.
Yeah, and that's what affects me about watching the movie is that I live that. So I don't. Movies are usually about what's happened in the past, and that's what this movie is about: things that happened in the past. And I don't want to relive the past as much. I want to move forward. And there's nothing we can do about what happened back during those days. All we can try and do is help those players that are suffering from what they went through during those days, and that's what this concussion settlement is all about. And I'm encouraged that the NFL is doing the right things moving forward as far as how they're handling the concussion situation, how they're trying to make the game safer, how they're putting money into research to make the game safer, all those different things. So that's what I'm more concerned about right now. And because I had 6 concussions during my playing days and I heard about the concussion settlement, I looked into it more legally, and this is going to be a process that I think players are going to need legal representation in order to make it through this process, because it's going to be a very difficult process. Not something they can't handle, but it's something that you might need a little assistance with. That's why we developed this website called fortheplayers.com, and also a 1-800 number, 844-84-PLAYERS. And it's just a resource, information source for them to go to understand what it's going to take to get this compensation that they definitely deserve. But if you miss the window of 180 days once this appeal is finalized, you won't be able to get any compensation from it. So I just want players to be on top of what's going on, be prepared for what's getting ready to happen, so they won't miss out on an opportunity to get some compensation for it. You know, there's guys out there that can't keep a job because of what happened during football, guys that have short-term memory, guys that have dementia, there's guys in deep depression, there's guys that can't afford medical care. So I think this settlement will help a lot of guys that are going through a lot of these struggles.
That's good stuff. You know, Warren, I wanted to ask you this, and you mentioned before that you're about looking forward, which really is a good way to live life. And almost every circumstance, I'd certainly co-sign that. But I had to run this by you. And just for our younger audience, for those, and Tiki referenced it, the 6 years in Canada, and you're, 58, 59, late 50s, right, at this point, Warren?
59, yeah.
Okay, 59. And when you were coming up, the plight of the black athletes, the quarterback, was very different than it is now. And I'm curious, because we discussed this on the show the other day, when you hear, even if it was in jest, what Dexter Manley said, black quarterbacks have a penchant to run because, quote, they're kind of used to running from the law. You know, as somebody who really had to really battle these stigmas and it affected your career, I mean, that's got to bother you when you hear something like that. How'd you react to Manley's idiotic quotes?
Well, yeah, I knew Dexter was probably trying to be funny with that, but it just wasn't a good timing, and it wasn't a good joke to say, especially about, you know, quarterbacks running from the law. Come on. Yeah, it just wasn't in good taste, and I'm sure he regrets saying that, and hopefully he does regret saying that. But, yeah, you just don't want people, especially of your own race, making those types of jokes about players after we've done so much and come so far at that position. And that's kind of the reason why I can take this approach on this concussion thing, because that's the way I looked at my career. I know I wasn't dealt with fairly along the way as I tried to make that trail as a quarterback. But I wasn't going to dwell on it. I wasn't going to look back and feel sorry for myself or any of that. I was just going to keep trudging forward and try and keep working. And if I got the opportunities, I would take advantage of those opportunities. And that's kind of the way my career went. If I would have felt sorry for myself, or if I would have gave in and said, want to play another position because that's what they wanted me to do, who knows where my career would have went. So I'm glad I stuck to it. I'm glad I had the confidence and the cockiness and the arrogance to keep doing it. And I'm glad I got the opportunities that I got because I made the most of them going forward. And I'm proud to say that because of my play, because of Randall Cunningham's play, because of Doug Williams' play, I think that's what opened the door for that next group of African-American quarterbacks to really get a lot of opportunities. And now you see what's going on with African-Americans now. It's not even an issue anymore. When Russell Wilson went to the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, nobody even talked about him being an African-American. So that's what we were striving for all that time, to just be included as a quarterback. And I think we're at that point now, and I'm really proud of the fact that I played a small role in that.
Good stuff, Warren. Really good perspective, man. We'll tweet the info out for you, fortheplayers.com, and the number. And stay warm. Enjoy the game coming up this weekend, man.
Yeah, they all should be pretty good. They always are, and this is what everybody plays for, the playoffs. So thanks for having me on, guys, and you guys have a great day.
Pleasure as always, Warren. Be good.